analysis, or log analysis made easy, is built by a group of people who are cyber analysts, and our job is to understand what's going on in the network, read logs, see what is going on and understand things. And so for me, PowerShell is a very important tool and to be able to accomplish that. I'm going to show some things as they deal with cyber, but in reality, they work in system administration just as easily. One of the things I like to have in my home network is the ability to test and view the latest stuff that are being used out in the wild by adversaries or attackers or malicious people, whatever title we want to throw on it, the bad stuff out there. And running a Windows workstation or a network like that is not a very good ability to see what's actually going on. You kind of want to be able to emulate what goes on in the business world. And so it's important that you have like a domain controller and a domain. And that's a lot of work. Plus, I don't want to spend a ton of money to have domain controller licenses and things like that. So for me, I need to be able to spin up and spin down domain controllers and machines joined to the domain to fit the environment that I want to create. The thing is, that's a lot of work, and you're going to be repeating that task over and over again, and it takes a lot of time to manually go in and configure all this stuff. So I have used PowerShell to make this job so much easier. I have a script, I got it from Sans, I've modified it slightly for my environment, but what it allows me to do is in a matter of minutes, I load up, I go to my VM farm, I install an instance of Windows Server, and then I put this script on it and I run it. And within minutes, I have a fully functioning domain controller. And I can go add machines to it, and then I can go do my tests. And when I'm done, if the license expires, no big deal. The system, I erase the system, and I put a brand new system on, and I put it back up. It's really easy for me to do tests that only take a short amount of time, but the amount of if I had to set up that infrastructure every time, it would be costly, timely, and expensive monetarily to do. So I've set up a Windows Server 2022. You can see it right here. This is if you go to Windows Server evaluation, you go online, go get that. They'll give you a 180-day license to run Windows Server free of charge. Go download that, put it on a VM farm, and then you can go ahead and I'll put the script down below that I'm going to walk through and play with it. See if use it for your own environment. If you're a system administrator, go ahead and use the principles here to improve the way you build infrastructure. And so anyway, this script is relatively long, but it's well documented. It tells you where you need to put the script, how you need to set PowerShell's execution policy, all there in code. Here, this validates that you're does a little make sure right off that network interface works and whether you're Active Directory. And then we come down here, maybe we want to change the culture, UI, cult interface, whatever. I'm going to leave mine as English US. Here, this is just an example script of how to take PowerShell and change some of its settings. This is PowerShell ICE, and it sets some of the background settings. They want it to run in black and white. Here's your font name, font size, foreground color, background color, etc. You don't need it. If you don't want it, comment it out. Checking for Windows Server. This wants to make sure that you actually are Windows Server. And so this is going to do a WMI call. If you're not familiar with WMI, I hope you'll pay attention to the rest of my videos I have, because I will have a section on WMI and SIM. They're very similar. It'll check, it gives you a whole new set of things to look at with PowerShell. This goes and checks, am I a server? If I am, good, I'll run it. If not, we probably shouldn't install this. You don't usually put domain controllers on anything besides servers. I want to make sure that about my administrator, going to check to make sure that I'm running as an administrator. I want to make sure that this file path exists. Again, this is not necessary, but they're going to be calling this file path later. If you did everything they were doing, which I'm not, there's a bunch of folders and stuff and applications in this directory that it will pull out and put other locations. Again, you could copy it completely out, and then you could run it wherever you want. It wants to make sure you have a network adapter. You need to have a network adapter in order to set up domain controller. Here, it's just going to check. If you don't, we're not going to move on. This here will handle, is this already a domain controller? If you're a domain controller already, don't bother to install all this stuff. And the way the script works is you run it twice. Once to install the domain controller and the forest and all that stuff, the second time to set up all the OUs. And so the script is going to check. The first time it'll go down one path, the second time it'll go down a different path. It's going to check to make sure the administrator has the right membership. It's going to check check your PowerShell profile. PowerShell profiling is a cool way to set up different settings for what's going to naturally work in your PowerShell. Play with it if you feel like it. But let's see, we're going to change. If it's going to look at your password, it's going to ask you, hey, is your password going to be complex? Because once it goes to domain controller, you might have some password rules and wants to make sure that that works so you don't have problems. If your password isn't strong enough, you're not sure, you can choose to use the default, this P at SS Word. That'll be a complex password, and it will allow you to use that. So it's just going to make sure that your password is strong enough so that when it goes to domain controller, you don't have problems. We're going to make sure your network interface is up and working. We're going to One of the things we want to set here, this is a really cool, important feature. On line 417, it tells you what's the IP address for your domain controller. For me, I'm just going to leave mine 10.1.1.1. Maybe if you're going to use this as a system admin, this would definitely be a place you'd want to change. That's not where you want your domain controller, or maybe it is. Then we come down here to We're going to turn off Server Manager Auto Run. That's just a nice little feature to make things easier. If you're used to how Windows servers start up, every time that starts up, you get this little page. Maybe that's not something you want. And so we've turned this off. It's not going to turn on anymore each time once the script runs. We can install Active Directory if necessary, which the first time it's absolutely necessary, the next time it won't be. And so this will set up your domain controller. It's going to set up the AD forest. We're going to create OUs. I'm going to go through this really quick, but the principle here is, let's make sure we have it right here that I mentioned that on line 522, you will see this is where I can name my system. Keeping the L.A.M.E log analysis made easy, we're going to call this domain lame.private. If you're doing it for personal use, .private is a really good way to make sure you don't have any sort of domain conflicts. Anyway, so there is my domain that I'm going to make, lame.private. Now I'm going to build my OUs. OUs are really important because you want to run your network using group policy. The last thing you want to do is be configuring all these systems. In the perfect world, as much as possible, you're going to have group policy apply and set things for your systems. And so you apply group policies to organizational units, or OUs. We're going to create our OUs right here. We're going to create an AD organizational unit called staging area. I actually have a PowerShell script. If I remember to share it later, I'll walk you through it. And all new machines added to the domain in my PowerShell script are set up so that they will go right here to the staging area. And the staging area has its own set of management. It really restricts down what they have access to. And when a machine's been approved to be on the domain, you can move it out of the staging area to its proper OU. I don't know that I would call things like this, but what if you have a place for high value targets? Or maybe in the new world where we're at, we've got stuff with organizational technology, OT. You can create your own little environments. And so this one here was high value targets called HVT. I created a type of computer system. So these are general purpose systems. Down below, you'll find I have a business system, and you can create whatever you want, but these machines support this type of work. These machines support this type of work. And then down below that, I call out organizational units, and it's the general purpose, and I'm going to give it based off buildings. That's a great tactic. So for example, say you have a shared print server. The thing is, if you're a big, huge organization, you're going to have printers all over the locations. And one saved printer is not good enough. And if you make every printer available, every printer your company owns, then you get a massive list of printers. What if you made a group policy that says, say you're in building K's, this is your printer. If you're in building UB, this is your printer. If you're in building E.R.O.B., this is your printer. And so you could set up group policy rules, Wi-Fi rule, anything you want based off of that you are a general purpose system and you're in this building. Then to get even more granular, we actually can put the the OU for what kind of computer system they are. Are you Windows 10, Windows 7, Server 2012, Linux, Mac, printers, other devices, and then you can apply those systems, the correct computer systems, into that OU, and so you can apply it. So Windows 10 machines sitting in ESL in the general purpose get this group policy, and so you can get very granular with your group policy objects. And the beauty is this looks like a lot of code, but if you notice, it is literally a copy and paste. I just copy and paste again and again, and all I do is I change the very last line. Here, this is for the building case, this is for the building UB, building EROB, et cetera, and down I go. Just make sure you put them in the right order, that you build the buildings before you build the computer systems. Otherwise, this OU won't exist and you'll have an error. And it's just copy and paste. You can do it all however however you want to set up your domain. And I come down here, here's my business systems, very similar, almost the exact same way I set up the general purpose. And so I literally copy and paste, and all I do is I do a find and replace in this code for general purpose and change it to business. And this doesn't even need to change, we just keep changing the business down below. And away you go. Here I did an infrastructure enclave. We built, then we'll have one down here. This is, maybe you have security reasons, you have different individuals from countries that you have to apply different security rules to, maybe you're in the government, things like that. Well, why not build a organizational unit like this? This one's for foreign nationals. And if you're a foreign national in these buildings, these rules, you get a different set of domain policy applied to group policy. And so we set this up for foreign national users. Here are your everyday, normal, regular L.A.M.E users. Realize, again, these are because you apply group policy to users and computers. So this here is your users, user group, and then assign them to buildings and assign them to, maybe you assign them computer groups, situations. This gives you a lot of granularity. But again, I can write all this up, write it once. I don't have to do this again. Copy and paste is easy. Have you ever been into an Active Directory and you're setting all those OUs? Oh, it's tedious. And imagine if you had to set that up for every machine, every domain controller. You have multiple domain controllers in your network. It can get very tedious. This saves so much work. I have an OP group. I was just playing around. Anyway, the script that I'll be sharing, it shows here the SANS, when they did it, they built it based off geographical units. So you got Boston and the East Coast, Europe, et cetera, et cetera. They show you how to build new AD users if you want to start with certain Active Directory users already enabled. Maybe this is your base domain controller users, whatever the case may be. If you have a reason to set up some Active Directory accounts right off, go for it. Here shows you how to build Active Directory groups. And so you can put your users into AD groups, make them members of the group. Here you can add AD computers if you want. So anyway, just like that, it's got a lot of different capabilities. These have been commented out, so I won't be doing it for my setup, but you can feel free to do it for yourself. I'm going to do check to update files, help files for PowerShell. That's really important. You get a new operating system out. You want to make sure that your PowerShell help is up to date so that you're getting the latest and greatest information from PowerShell. Here, they actually went through the SANS directory and they did a recursive to go see every file that was just read-only, and they're erasing it. That's just another example, something you can do with PowerShell. Whether you need to do it with this setup, there's no reason to do that. Here, it's actually creating some files because they're going to do, this is for a class, so they're going to create some text files that you would go browse around the domain controller. If you need to put files out on your directory, it's there you go. If you want to create new items, so for example, here they're building, again, more text files, putting content into the text files. Here, this is actually copying uh, exe files from the sans directory to a new location. I'm not going to do it, and when you see it, I'll actually get the nice red errors because it's going to say, hey, do you have MD5 deep, netcat, incognito, things like that? Nope, I don't. Here you can actually install programs. So what if you want your domain controller to have a certain set of software already installed? It's just this simple invoke expression command, call the name of the file you want to run, and you're good to go. Then you can validate, confirm your audit policy is running. Here we've got turning off Internet Explorer enhanced security. Maybe that's something you want to do. You don't. That's annoying if you ever run into the Internet Explorer and it gives you all those lovely messages. This can take care of that for you. This is so anyway. Then once you're done, the file will close itself out and away you go. You've got yourself a domain controller. So let's actually put this in. Let's get this working. I've talked long enough. If you're still with me, kudos to you. We're going to go Windows PowerShell. I'm going to run as administrator. I'm going to cd into cd sans, just following the instructions it had right at the very beginning in the comments. And if I do a directory listing, I can see that there is a test PS. And so I'm going to do /test PS, run that. It's going to go check my Windows servers, all those different checks. Now it wants to know, is your password complex or not? In my case, I don't need to change my password. It's good, so I'll write complex in there, and it's going to say your current password has not been changed. And I'm going to get a whole bunch of different things. It's going to tell me, hey, I've changed your IP address, setting your DNS bind, and we'll get progress. We can see a little progress bar here moving. I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing, but if you look at the time, we are at 10:41. I basically started that script 10:41-ish, maybe 10:40. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to come back when all of installation is done. And you can see, well, the first set, and then I'll run it one more time to have all the OUs built. And you can see how long the script will actually take to run. All right, welcome back. We had a nice little pause. It is now 10:53, so it took about 13 minutes. So I'm going to go Control Alt Windows. There we go. I'm in, and now we can see that already we've got a little slightly different thing going on here. Definitely looks like we're part of a domain. First thing we should notice is I'm not going to get Server Manager loaded up here anymore, but I do have the Active Directory Administration. Let's go AD Directories, Users, and Computers. Just show this, there's my L.A.M.E private. I'm definitely part of a domain. Domain controller has been set up. But as I said, the script wants you to run it one more time. So let's go ahead and load up PowerShell one more time. This time we're going to set up all those OUs that we went through. I'm going to run that as an administrator. Run that. It's going to check. Oh, you're already a Windows server. We're good. Ignore the reds. They're not really that big a deal. There's things that I didn't configure because I'm not using them, but I didn't bother to comment them out. The script is pretty resilient. We'll just continue to work. All right, so it's going through, creating OUs and other AD objects. Just wait for another little bit, updating my help files. All those reds, if you look at them, was, oh, it's not, couldn't install Wireshark, couldn't install KeePass, couldn't install Process Hacker. Remember, if you look at my script, I said it was going to attempt to install them, but those files aren't there, so it's not going to work. Now, if I do a refresh, You'll now see there's my high value targets, general purpose, there's my L.A.M.E users, there's my staging area, OP. If I go into say general purpose, there's all the buildings. I go into the buildings, there's all of that. I could have gone through and manually typed all of those, but no, that's the point of automation. And so I have a fully functioning domain controller in under 15 minutes when I run that script. That sure doesn't seem like it's a very long time for me to run. That is one of the cool powers of PowerShell. I now have a domain controller. I can go do some tests. I can go get a Windows server, Windows box, Windows 10 box or whatever, join the domain controller, try out some viruses or different types of attacks that are going around that we see going out in the wild, and test them and get to an understanding of what I should be looking for as an analyst. Anyway, I hope this helps you. I'm planning on putting a whole bunch of videos together. I truly hope that you'll follow the video training, pick and choose what is useful to you, but I wanted to demonstrate why PowerShell is valuable. And so I wanted to show other examples of using PowerShell to uh, automate and make things happen quicker and faster and make you a more effective IT person. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I hope that you'll come back for more content.